Hello, and welcome back to Foreign Policies, podcast by yours truly about everything that has to do with being in your 20s, moving abroad, being a woman, a young woman, or man, as I always say, in general. How's everyone doing? I actually don't know if you can reply to that. You can if you want to, but I will only know it later. So I hope everybody's doing okay. I'm doing great. I've been having a headache for the past 3 days, and I don't know why. I hope it's not brain cancer or anything like that. Hopefully it's only because of hormones, because I'm on birth control and I needed to renew it, but my doctor's on holiday, and here in Denmark people go on holidays for 3 weeks. So I think she left, and maybe I can only get it renewed when she's back, which is in 10 more days? I don't know. So I'm off of that for now, and hopefully I can just hop back on it later. But obviously my hormones are probably a little bit off. Before anyone gets upset that I'm using birth control, because it happened in the past and everybody was like, oh my god, you're gonna die. I don't think I'm gonna die. I think I'm okay. I'm using the one that's not the highest hormone level changer or whatever. And it's working fine for me. So we're good over here, but I'm missing it a little bit. That's it. Because I started having these migraines around the time when I started using it, and then I read up on it, and apparently migraines are also connected to hormonal changes. Another crazy thing about being a woman. I love it. Anyway, let me get a sip of my drink, because maybe that's gonna help me wake up. Alright. Other than that, what is up with me? I started reading the third book from the Fourth Wing series, and I'm struggling with it, to be honest, because I'm a library girl. Use libraries. You can get books for free for a month. So I started reading it more than a month ago. I actually I was able to add another month because I just could not get started with it, and it's just so hard. I feel like you guys can hear my breathing. I'm trying to adjust this microphone so that it is the best, but maybe it needs that thing on it so that you can't hear my breathing, and when I'm doing that, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna hold it like this, maybe. Yeah, it's better. So what did I want to say? So I'm not even at 100 pages of this thick ass book, and it's just so hard. The first book, I loved it in a way that's kind of a guilty pleasure. It's so bad that it's good. And then I read the second book as well 2 years ago, and now I'm trying with the third one, and I already heard that it's not as good as the rest of them, and that it's badly written. I have this friend who I'm discussing this book a lot with, and she warned me more than a year ago that it's not gonna be as good, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. It's badly written. I think it's very hard for my brain to understand what's going on, but we'll see. Anyway, interestingly, let me just say this. Where's my notion? Interestingly, whenever I leave voice messages to my friends, which I do a lot, I tend to yap for minutes about almost nothing. And I feel I've only been talking for 2 minutes about this thing, and then I look at my phone and it says we are at 8. But when I do the podcast, I feel I'm doing the same thing, and then I look at the time. It's only been 5 minutes. I'm okay. Feels I've talked about so much. Also, in the previous episode, maybe you could tell that I was getting a little bit tired, because when I edited it, I was driving myself crazy with how much I say instead of using an actual word. And I just wanted to apologize for that. I think that's so annoying. I was annoying myself so much. So this episode, And from now on, the challenge is going to be to try not to use like as much or at all. So let's go. Today's topic is about moving abroad, because a lot of you guys are probably here to hear about what it is like to move abroad, what it is like to live abroad. But I do want to always put like a little twist on it or make it interesting, because if you want to know what it's like, or if you want to hear experiences, you can, that already exists on the internet. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about 5 things I learned in 5 years living abroad, but like niche edition. Okay, it's not going to be that niche, but to me it was. So hopefully it's going to be to you as well. So as I said in the first episode, and if you guys already knew this, then you already knew this, I moved to Copenhagen almost 5 years ago. I'm going to have my anniversary in August, so we're going to celebrate there. And in these past 5 years, obviously, I went through a lot of different experiences, because I moved here to study, and then I was unemployed for a while, and then I started working. And I have a lot of experiences with like friends and love and living situations and, whatever you can think of. So I'm trying to share as much of this as possible with you guys. I just checked, and I think the sound quality is good, but the picture that you see might not be. And I think that is because we have less light than last week. If you're watching this, honestly, this is just part of the experience. Like, listen more than watch, but also sometimes look at me. The first thing that popped into my mind when I was thinking about 5 things that I learned in the past 5 years is something that I do talk about a lot with my friends as well, or like I bring it up, which is my Hungarian identity got a lot stronger since I moved here, because it's that identity, those things that make me uniquely different, make me more me in a foreign environment, basically. What this means is when you live at home in your home country, usually you belong, to that group in a lot of ways, through your traditions, through your history, what you grow up with, who and what you surround yourself with. And then when you move abroad, you are among different people. And those things that used to be normal, and those things that you thought were like, boring and whatever, those are the things that might make you special and also maybe, proud of yourself. For me, this was a big revelation, because it's not that I didn't like Hungary, but as my home country, I always thought of it as like, the base minimum, like not the base, that's not a word, but like the base level of things, because that's like the most normal place to grow up. And also, people would sometimes praise the nature in Hungary, and I always thought that, well, the nature in Hungary is just the most basic nature ever, or the architecture. And I would always think that, well, I mean, it's nice, but because I've never seen anything else, or I've never lived anywhere else, of course, to me, that was normal. Danish people are very different from Hungarian people in a lot of ways, but also very similar in a lot of ways. And I think my differences, even though at first I was like, I don't know how I feel about them, sorry I said like there, after some time I realized that those are such cool things. For example, the language. Language to me, the Hungarian language specifically, is a huge thing that I never appreciated when I was living back home. I knew that it was like a beautiful language. I knew this. But for lack of better words, I never felt it in my bones. I was never in love with it in the way that I am now. Because as I started using English in everyday life and also started learning Danish, I realized, oh my God, how much richer the Hungarian language is. Like, it's crazy, actually. And I'm trying to explain this to people from time to time, of course, who are non-Hungarian and they don't really understand. I'm like, do you know how many different words we have for like when it's raining? It's just beautiful. And sometimes I read books in Hungarian specifically because I know that it's just a so much better experience than in English, since it's not something that's around me 24/7. It's like a little treat. It's my thing that I appreciate and that I want to keep safe and that I want to cherish and be proud of. And I am even sad sometimes that I don't get to use it every day. So whenever I leave voice messages to my friends in Hungary, for example, I'm trying to use as many like interesting words as possible, I guess, because that's when I get to use them. And another example is nature, that, as I said, used to be boring. I don't care, whatever to me in Hungary. Like, it's trees, all right, and grass and water was the big deal. Now that I live here and the nature is, well, it's not bad. It has its beauty, but I do miss what we have in Hungary, and all of a sudden I realized how much better it is in so many ways. I don't think I ever would have realized this, and I don't think this would be something that I feel proud of. But now I know that that is what sets me and my identity apart a little bit. And yeah, just rocking it. The second thing that I learned is that it's impossible to keep every single friendship alive. And this was something that was a hard hit for me, I guess you could say that, because I'm a very social person and I was always very proud of my friend groups and my friendships and my friends and everything. And I always had a lot of friends. And when I moved here, I left behind a couple of friend groups that I knew I wanted to keep alive as much as I can. Of course, I wasn't delusional. I knew that things are going to change and I'm going to lose some friends and everything like that. But I was also a little bit delusional, I'm not going to lie. Because I thought that, just using group chats, just meeting up whenever I'm home is going to be enough. I don't think many friends left me behind, or many friend groups started excluding me. Part of this whole process is that friends groups also shifted and changed and fell apart. So it's not only because I moved abroad, but when they were still alive and active and everything, it became harder and harder to keep those friendships up. And of course, I made new friends here who were around me in person, so we could actually meet up and do stuff together. And then also, outside of that, keeping the old friendships alive was a bit tough, especially since every time I went home for a couple of weeks, it was basically just running around trying to meet all of my friends and all of the friend groups. After some time, it was just so exhausting, and in a good way. I wanted to do it and I wanted to meet with these people, but I did start to question if it makes sense that whenever I'm home, I'm just doing this, and if it's enough to keep it going. And then a point comes when it's just not sustainable anymore in a way. It's nobody's fault. Life is just like that. And maybe, as I said, even if you don't move away, friendships fall apart and friends drift away from each other. So, yeah, I guess that's a smaller one, but I don't think I really anticipated it, or I didn't want to believe it. Point three. People who move abroad have more things in common with you than people from your home country. I read this from my phone. So what I realized was that there is a certain personality type who moves abroad, and a lot of people that I've met in my class and just in life in general, we share something common, which is very fun to see and explore. All of these people, obviously, who move abroad are a bit more open and a bit more active and social, because you move abroad to get to know the culture and get to know new people and do stuff. So in general, they are easier to become friends with. But there's also an immediate understanding and trust because we are both in a foreign country, and we both know that we made sacrifices to be here, and we both share the same passion for, I guess, exploring, doing something different than people who stayed at home would do and stuff like that. This is not at all to look down on or have any opinion on people who stay at home. It's just, it was interesting to see and realize how, even though we come from different countries, different backgrounds, different childhoods, so many different things, we get along better than someone who is also from my country, basically. Well, if we meet here, then also we both moved here, so we're vibing. But for example, I made friends from India, and our backgrounds, our childhoods could not be more different. Like, I have no idea what they're talking about. It's just really cool to meet with these people and to get to know them, honestly. My last 2 points, I'm gonna try to explain them as best as I can, because in my head they make sense, but it was a bit hard to write them down in a way that they made sense, if you know what I mean. So let's just hear it. Point 4 is that I learned more about the system I grew up in by being outside of it. I was thinking that this is a bit similar to my first point, knowing what separates you and makes you proud, but in a different way. Because the system where you grew up in is everything, like the culture, the society, school system, political systems, so many things, even more things than you realize, because it's your basic environment, what you consider as normal. So you don't even necessarily see the system and where the system is and where it's functional and where it's dysfunctional. And because you grow up in it from, being a child, you accept it as normal, and this is how things are. And even though you live, in the world of the internet, and you can watch movies and there's social media and whatever, so obviously we are not oblivious to what's going on in other parts of the world, it is still a bit different to actually move away from this bubble, this normal place where you grew up in, to another place where other things are normal, and observed your home system from a distance. Now, I moved to Denmark, so the systems and the culture here is still European, and it's not very different from Hungarian, but there were still enough differences for me to open my eyes to some things. For example, one thing here is the hierarchy. How is that called? A flat hierarchy. So what I grew up in, obviously in Hungary, is that we are not such a flat society. So respect is demanded and expected from people who are below you, in a way, below you. Already in schools, like, you have to be so respectful of your teachers and kind of afraid of them too, and they can do basically whatever they want. And I don't know how it is nowadays, but I do remember that, like, school was a pretty scary place for a number of reasons for me, and I don't think that's good, because you are trying to teach those children something about life, hopefully. And I don't think you can teach very well with fear. But and like, I feel like back home our teachers allow themselves a language a lot of the times that is just so bad for the kids, because it's humiliating or degrading. But I think people who listen from my home country know what I'm talking about, and probably a lot of other people can relate to. And then this is, when you're like a little kid, and also I think it continues as you grow up until high school. Like, I was shouted at by one of my teachers in high school for how I was dressing, which was a pair of jeans with like ripped holes in them. And that was considered normal. And I guess we already knew that like that teacher is a bit crazy. But it was still, you know, that's how it is. But of course, when I moved here and I heard about the school system here, I realized how far my normal is from this normal. So people here are very like unfamiliar with the concept of even calling their teachers their last names or calling them like Mr. and Mrs. To me, I could never imagine calling my teachers their first names. But it's, you know, as I said, the gaps between the levels in the hierarchy are much smaller. So it's not like you have to be afraid of your teachers and respect them for what? For nothing. The same thing applies at work, I think, as well, where I work at least. And I think a lot of workplaces are similar. My CEO, my boss, doesn't have his own office. Like, it's not expected. He doesn't expect or demand respect at all. We're not afraid of him. It's a very friendly environment. Everybody can speak up. Everybody can say anything. There's no dress code. I think there's no dress code in general anywhere. There's no micromanaging and trying to control everything. People who are below you, basically. I guess there's just more trust given to people, while back home the normal thing is to always be a bit suspicious and to always try to control other people and the environment, which always breeds a lot of stress and frustration and misunderstanding and passive-aggressive conflicts and stuff like that, which is not good for anyone. But I don't only want to talk about negatives, because I have an idea about how it is also positive, what my normalcy is compared to here. What I observed was that there's not as much interesting art or movements, basically, or subcultures here as back home. And I thought that this was because there's not as much to basically fight against. So if you have a society and a country where things are kind of good, like stuff is working out, not much to be angry about, not much to speak up against, then you don't have a lot of incentives to start movements or to express yourself in your art, like if you make music or if you paint or in whatever. I feel like that all of that falls kind of flat here. It's because it's chill over here. And to me that was so out of the ordinary. I feel like back home there's always something to speak up against and always something to fight against, and there's always something that brings people together. And I think that is a great soil, I guess, for art and self-expression in general and subcultures and everything like that. So I do think that that is a normal thing to me, that I realized, oh, it's actually not normal. Maybe it's actually not normal to always have something to fight against. Wow, crazy. But I think we Hungarians are kind of like this like fighter type. There's always something to fight against. Some imagined, some that some people came up with, but some very real, which is good that we fight against them. Alrighty. The picture is getting worse and worse as the sun is setting. Although I can't even see the sun. Where is the sun? I feel like the sun should still be up at this point, but maybe we just have these clouds. Do we? I don't know. Because it's only end of July. So the sun should still be up, I think. Is it still up? Yeah. Sunset is in an hour, but it says that it's cloudy. So, okay. We have arrived at the last 5th point. I hope everybody's still with me. I hope everybody still understands what I'm talking about. Point 5 is gonna be maybe the hardest to understand. So, because I was also thinking about this a lot. Point 5 is that at one point you have to decide how much you want to assimilate. So what I mean by that is when you move abroad, you usually maybe already know if you will move back home or move to another place, or if you're gonna stay there forever. Sometimes you don't, but usually you have like a little like feeling about it. First of all, when I moved here, I was always like, I don't know if I'm gonna stay here forever. Let's see how it goes. I never had that feeling that, oh yeah, I'm gonna stay here forever. I have some people who I think who moved here from abroad, and they very much talk about it like this is the final destination. For me, I'm not sure. And if you are not sure, then you're always a little bit behind with the assimilation process, because of course, why would you fully assimilate to a culture that you might leave behind, basically? Although you still can if you want to, and this point is exactly about that. I thought, because the common consensus about this is that when you move to a country, you have to assimilate as much as possible. You have to learn the language, you have to act like a local, you have to adapt, you have to fit in. This I agree with to an extent. I think what is better to look at is that just because you move to a country, you shouldn't be expected to give up parts of your identity and put new parts into your identity that you don't feel comfortable with, whether or not you're gonna stay there forever or move somewhere else or move back home. And for a long time I thought that if I'm serious about staying here, even if just for a couple of years, I have an obligation to be as Danish as possible for that time. And obviously that includes learning the language and accepting the cultural differences, or like learning them and practicing them, basically. Because if Danish people are more withdrawing and a bit more private, then I have to be like that too. Even though I don't think I'm like that. I really enjoy being around outgoing people and people who want to talk to you and come up to you, and I love going up to people. Okay, that's an exaggeration. I don't love doing it, but I like being social, okay? And how Danish people are in general is just not really my type of thing. The language, in all honesty, is also not really my type of thing. I tried learning it and then I gave up a little bit, and maybe I will continue with it. I don't know. But with this point, I realized that it's not a failure of any kind if you decide that something is not for you, even though you moved to that country and now you have to live here. You can choose which part of that culture and what traditions or like whatever traits you want to pick up, and you don't have to pick up all of them. I know a bunch of people who moved here from abroad who don't speak the language. Most of my friends actually from abroad. At one point they tried to learn it. Some are still trying, but it's really, really hard. And everybody knows this, even Danish people know this. A lot of people give up because they just don't see themselves actually living that reality of using Danish instead of English at any point. So I think instead of trying to force it, and instead of trying to feel like I'm not a real person here, like I'm not fully allowed to be here yet, I think it's much better to feel that this is my mixed identity. Some of it is stuff that I like from the Danish lifestyle, and some of it is my original that I brought from home, and it's a mix of the two, and I don't want to sacrifice some of those things brought from home just to fit in more. It's kind of like an expectation that people maybe set for themselves. I certainly did, to become as much of local as possible instead of being an expat and just embracing that. You know, so to me, I think that works a bit better. And it also connects to my first point, that I have a lot of things in myself that I feel proud of, and that is my Hungarian identity that I want to embrace and I don't want to leave behind, and I don't want to hide it, and I don't want to switch it out to something else just so that I'm more like a Dane. And there are some things in the culture here and how people live that I love, so I am implementing those in my everyday life and leaving behind what I learned before I moved here. So it is a mix, and I think it's a beautiful mix, and it's much better than when I was trying to be as Danish as possible. Anyway, so those were the things that I wanted to talk about in this episode, and I'm gonna stop slowly because I feel like this is becoming a very long episode and the picture is just getting worse and worse, like I'm disappearing in the graininess. But I want to thank you guys so much for listening again and tuning in every week. I can see that the family, I don't know, our group of people here on YouTube and on Spotify as well is growing, which is so nice to see. I love to see it. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and see you next time, which is next week. Bye bye.